What's going on, you guys? TBR here, back yet again with another King of Fighters All-Star video, and happy Monday to all of you out there. I hope you all had a wonderful weekend. In today's video, we are going to be talking about a topic that we haven't had a chance to sit down and discuss quite yet based on that latest update. That's right, you guys, if you couldn't tell by the thumbnail or the title of this video, we are going to be talking about the buffs to SS Kyo. More importantly, we're going to be taking a look at this character and his placement in the meta post-buffs, and be seeing just how much of an improvement those made for him, whether they were for good or for bad, or they just kind of kept him in kind of the same position. We're going to discuss that in today's video, and I'm also going to show you guys a solo run against Lunatic difficulty on Omega Rugal, just so you guys can take a look at the damage output of this character after he's gotten these buffs, because while it has improved him, is it enough to make him a meta character? We're going to talk about it. But before we go ahead and get into all of that more, make sure if you guys haven't already done so, you smash that like button and subscribe. And without further ado, you already know what time it is. Cue that intro. Alright, you guys, so in today's video I wanted to go ahead and cover a topic that we haven't had a chance to sit down and discuss in depth yet on the channel, and that of course is going to be the buffs to SS Kyo. Now of course SS Kyo is the latest character to get buffed with EX Volume 3 and run alongside EX Krohnen. He is currently available if you guys want to try and pick him up, or if you want to pick up memories in order to pick up his change-up kit like I have. Now I've had about a week or so to play around with this character and kind of enjoy him and see just what changed with these buffs. If you guys want to check out the buffs in their entirety and see what we thought about those whenever they were announced, you can check that out. Link will be in the description. However, in today's video, now that I've had some time to play with him hands-on, I would like to discuss him because I'm sure you guys are aware, if you've been here on the channel for about a year or so, whenever this character was initially released, I was an enormous fan of this character, which isn't a surprise. Everybody was a huge fan of this character at the time. In fact, it may come as a surprise to a lot of people out there that haven't been around the game for very long, but SS Kyo actually enjoys the mantle of being the character that held the top of the meta mountain for the longest without being power crept. Believe it or not, SS Kyo comes from a time in this game where the characters could last at the top of the meta for more than a month at a time before a new character got released to completely power creep them. And while that may seem like it is some sort of fantasy land out there for most of you guys out there who just came into the game with the EX banners or Street Fighter, well, believe it or not, that used to be a thing. So SS Kyo, of course, a year removed from his release or more, is now kind of well, he's tumbled down that mountain and hit his head. So, you know, SS Kyo is not going to be anywhere near the meta monster that he once was, even post-buff, spoiler alert. But I do want to discuss it because while he isn't necessarily going to be the top of the meta, this is still going to be a pretty solid overall little character, especially on a budget, which we'll talk about. So let's talk about SS Kyo, right? So SS Kyo, when we talked about those buffs initially, the biggest thing we had noticed is they really tried to address his damage, right? So his damage output got addressed in a big way through multipliers and so on, which was really nice for him. He did need that help, especially considering the fact that, again, this is a character that has seen a ton of characters surpass him in damage over the course of the time since his initial release. But one of the better things that they did do for him is they did give him this core here that decreases his active skill cooldowns by 0.3 seconds upon landing a hit on a burned target. And then when you take a look at the rest of his kit, you're going to notice things such as his patented S1 that has that 20% chance to reset the cooldown when using a skill without having a cooldown on that at all. So you could pretty much proc this indefinitely as long as you keep hitting that 20% multiplier. And when it comes to some of this other stuff here, I mean, really, you're going to notice that this character's trying to do some pretty basic things. This character comes from a much simpler time. This character comes from a time from before explosion was going to be the meta, and having 5.5 times explosion ended up making or breaking your kit when it came to your damage numbers. So He doesn't necessarily have that explosion. He doesn't have that 5.5 times explosion either. Instead, what he's trying to do is do something more traditional, which is just to apply his dot and to keep a lot of damage on the board through being able to throw out really nice finishers, of which he has a couple different options with some pretty nice length to them, trying to stop the clock, and so on. Like I said, this is a character that's a little bit outdated. He isn't going to be doing a lot of the things that we have considered meta nowadays. This is more so the meta a year ago, right? And they didn't do a lot to change that, unfortunately. So really what you're going to notice, the nicest thing about his kit is the amount of resets he has between the S1, the cores, and then he even has another one on here. So he's going to have some pretty nice resets overall in his kit, which is going to be nice for his overall PG gain, for his finishers, and so on and so forth. He's going to be able to do consistent damage and keep finishers active in things such as Guild Raid, so that way you can keep the clock stopped. However, outside of those things, this character doesn't have a whole lot else going on for him. The biggest problem for this character at this point, really, this character lacks survivability. That's a big thing. He lacks explosion. That's another one. If this character had explosion and he had maybe, say, a shield, or even if he had something on his kit outside of this one immunity core here, as well as his hyper armor, then he might be in a better position. Even a heal would be something that we see nowadays on a lot of these characters that helps him out quite a bit. That might have been nice for him. Unfortunately, he is very bare bones when it comes to that sort of stuff. And unfortunately, I do feel like you guys will see in the footage, because I'm going to show you guys a lunatic run solo with this character. We're doing it for the tradition of things. There was a time in this game on my channel where I was actually told to stop doing SS Kyo videos because people were tired of seeing them back in the day. So yeah, that just shows you guys how much I enjoy this character, and I still enjoy him. I love him to death. He's so much fun to play. He is still a character that is genuinely enjoyable to play, but unfortunately, he does lack a lot of those things, right? He does have other things on his kit, though, that are nice, like, for instance, his leadership skill for SS fighters. By SS standards, is one of the better leadership skills in the game. He has some amazing tags on him. He's going to have the 3 Sacred Treasures tag, as well as the 1 + 9,999 tag, both of which do have limited edition stones. So you could do something where you went ahead and gave him stones for both of those here, which would be nice. As you guys can see, I have the 3 Sacred Treasures one here for the crit. So this is a character that does have a lot of options there. He has the option of being able to use any of the SS stones. He's also going to have availability for a ton, and I mean a ton, of weapons when it comes to set cards, option cards, and so on. But unfortunately, again, that doesn't change the fact that this character does lack all the aforementioned things, right? But he does have a lot going for him as well. He's going to be a character that you can center around a very beginner-friendly team and do a lot of work with. That's very nice. But it is worth noting that he does lack a lot of those other things. So when it comes to things that Kyo does well, really, when it comes to having all these different weapons at his disposal for equipables, it does make him kind of a Swiss Army knife in that capacity, so you can kind of play around with it. I've tested quite a few things on him, but unfortunately, a lot of these card sets, like these guys here that are buffing overall dot damage for characters that have the tags that he has, without having that explosion, really don't end up doing a whole lot for him. So really what I actually go back to is what I used back when I was showcasing him a year ago, and that's a Tekken set. Now, if you guys don't have Tekken set, by all means, you don't need it. You can use a different set on him. There's plenty of options out there. You can use any of the SS options out there for set cards and so on that would be beneficial to him. He has a lot of different things you can do with him. Tons of different card sets out there that you could use with this character. I'm not going to sit here and name them all off. I just wanted to use these as an example of something that he isn't unfortunately going to be able to get the most use out of without that explosion, so keep it in mind. However, Tekken set does surprisingly high damage on this character, and a lot of characters in general. A lot of people, this set has a bad rep when it comes to its damage output, but if you're somebody that has this thing on the proper character with the proper transcendental effects and you're using it correctly, this set is actually very respectable on damage. It isn't going to be the top DPS in the game by any stretch of the imagination, but when you're talking about a character that doesn't have a ton of great options, and you're talking about a character that actually likes to stop the clock as much as this one does, to stall because of this finisher in particular, but by all means, there are plenty of other finishers you could use. The X-Kyo finisher that came out with his banner is actually usable on SS-Kyo, so you could go that direction as well. So he does have a lot of different options there. I recommend just playing around with what you got. But in general, this character also is going to have an exclusive option, speaking of the X-Kyo. Unfortunately, the exclusive option on him, again, because it is going to be another one that is wanting to buff burn, he doesn't have the ability to really use it very well because he doesn't have that explosion. So again, this character, he is going to be in kind of a weird position because of the lack of explosion, the lack of regen, the lack of shield, the lack of sustainability, and those are all things that really hold this character back. Because if this character had the explosion, you guys are going to be able to see from the damage in this video that this character could have been something great again. Unfortunately, as it sits right now, he's kind of just mid. There's really not anything about this character that stands out beyond the leadership skill, some of the tags being nice for him being able to use some of the different things he can use as a result, and so on. I mean, he's very versatile in those regards, but outside of just being fun to use and kind of just being cool because it's Kyo, there's really not a whole lot else there, unfortunately. However, there is one big thing to be said about SS-Kyo, and that is the fact that this is still a character that new players just coming into the game can pick up basically for free. You still do have that option of picking up that craftable ticket in the craft exchange, and you can select SS-Kyo as a fighter near the beginning of your time playing this game, which is really nice because, well, let's face it, this is a character that while he may not be at the top of the meta for endgame stuff, this is going to be a character that now you could go in, pick up for free at the beginning of the game, and he can carry you through almost any of the early game content with ease, because this is still a very strong character. It's just that unfortunately he's kind of at the bottom of the meta now, and he doesn't seem like he's probably going to be pulling himself back up anytime soon when it comes to some of these limited banner characters, unfortunately, which I know is going to disappoint a lot of people out there, because I know a lot of people love this character and wanted to see him get some really nice buffs. And while they did do quite a bit for him in some regards, unfortunately, he still does leave a lot to be desired. And if you're somebody that's a veteran that's spoiled on a lot of these newer characters, you're probably going to find yourself pretty disappointed by the results with him. But at the same time, like I said, from what I was able to tell and glean from him, he's become a respectable character again, but not anything that I would go out of my way to build up unless you're kind of in that newer position, like I mentioned, where you need a really, really strong carry at the beginning of the game, and you don't necessarily have a lot of these newer characters yet, which at that point, this guy will be your best friend. But, you know, you guys can play around with it. There's tons of options, like I said, when it comes to equipables for this guy, tons of different SS sets, tons of different sets in general you could use on him, option cards. He has all sorts of things he can play around with. You have a ton of different options with finishers, but in general, that's kind of what I'm seeing with SS-Kyo. He's in a good position, but he's not anywhere near as good as some of these other characters. Even some of the characters that have been buffed prior to him are in a better position now post-buff than he is. And a lot of that actually has to do with the fact that when it comes to his cores, he didn't end up getting any of the EX skills that are really that great. He got max and penetrate, which is fine. So he didn't really get anything super special there, unfortunately. So it just is what it is. He's kind of in that weird spot where if you're a fan, you can get some use out of him, like myself. But outside of that, being a new player is really who I would recommend this guy to, and I would tell everybody else to kind of stay away. It just really isn't worth going for it, especially if you're maybe thinking about chasing memories. I don't think it's worth doing that for this guy, but that's going to pretty much be that, guys. That's kind of what I've derived from him. I'll show you the fame real quick that way, just so you guys are aware of what's going on there. But, you know, at the end of the day, when it comes to SS-Kyo, I think that they didn't do enough for him. They did do some nice things, but it really isn't enough to put him anywhere near the top of the meta. So, you know, it is what it is. He's just a character that's going to end up being, he's kind of like that guy that's past his prime sitting at the end of the bar talking about how he almost made it back in high school playing football, and now he's just the burnout who sits at the end of the bar and drinks and goes home and yells at his family every night. Yeah, he's kind of that guy now, which is it's kind of sad, right? Poor guy. What went wrong? But anyway, you guys, that's going to be today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Smash that like button and subscribe if you did. I hope you enjoy the footage on your way out, and until the next one, you all take care. Peace.
Continue.